Okay, starting now, so you got about 10 seconds.
All right. Hello, everyone that's with us today for day 2 of AAC in the Cloud. Today we have Breanne presenting on empowering communication, a deep dive into the CoreWord Language System. And we will be under track 2 or channel 2 in Slack. And I'll be moderating any questions that come through, but we'll hold those till the end. So I'll hand it over to Breanne now.
Perfect. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I hope you all have been enjoying AAC in the Cloud so far. I'm so glad you're here with me today. My name is Breanne Bockwoldt. I'm an assistive technology specialist for Forbes AAC. I'm based in Denver, Colorado, and today we will be talking about empowering communication, a deep dive into the CoreWord Language System. So the CoreWord Language System is a combination of core vocabulary, fringe vocabulary, banks of key phrases with a bunch of different vocabulary sizes to choose from. And we'll be going through the components of the CoreWord system and how its features can be used with a variety of different communicators you may be working with. Just some disclosures to start off with. I am a paid employee of Forbes AAC, and I'm a member of ASHA. This course will exclusively focus on Forbes AAC SGDs, but a lot of this content can be carried over and discussed in regards to other AAC systems. So we're just focusing on Forbes content right now, but you can take some of these concepts with you. Here are our learning outcomes for today. We will go over navigating and utilizing all the different layouts we have available within CoreWord. So we previously had layouts for 6, 20, and 40 buttons. And really exciting, we've since expanded to include CoreWord 12 and 60, which gives access to even more vocabulary choices for each user to be able to express everything from basic to more complex thoughts. We'll also discuss specific situations where the CoreWord language system, given all of our diverse layouts, can enhance communication efficiency and effectiveness. So it's not only about the amount of vocabulary the communicator has access to, but also providing them with the tools to express themselves quickly and independently. And finally, we'll learn a little bit about how to integrate the CoreWord language system into AAC practices and give some examples of how to use the system during implementation. First of all, we can't talk about the CoreWord language system without first talking about the core vocabulary approach to AAC. So hopefully we've all at least heard about this by now. We're at an AAC conference, but it's always good to rehear the information and hear it again in different ways, just for a refresher. Core vocabulary, as we know, is a small set of high frequency words that we use most of the time when we're speaking. This isn't exclusive to AAC users. Those with typically developing language also use core vocabulary in 70 to 80-ish% of the words that they say. And giving our communicators access to these words make them for a very happy communicator because they have access to all of the language they need to be able to communicate a variety of different things. So we're going to start off with an activity. So I want you to look at this visual of all the different communication functions and think about if you could only choose one communication function for the rest of your life, can only speak in that function, can only protest things, you can only make comments, which one would you want to choose? So I'll give you a few seconds to drop that in Slack, and then Rachel, if you could read off some of the ones that are being picked. And I know we're on a little bit of a delay, right?
We are about 10 to 15 seconds. We've got some people typing, protesting, commenting. a few for protesting. One wrote joking, and then in parentheses, just kidding.
Just cracking jokes for the rest of your life. That's all you can do. Protesting is a good one too. Being able to say no, that you don't like something. Any other ones coming up?
Yeah, we've got a few for social routine, maintaining a conversation.
That one's kind of cheating. I feel like that goes into more. Yeah.
And then we have one more that says protesting, don't like the idea of being controlled unless I can use commenting in a passive aggressive way.
You guys are funny. Okay. So this is just to show how hard it is to just have one communication function and how hard it is to just have access to only that. So what do you think we usually start with our communicators, and we teach and we focus on first, which function? And it's going to be requesting. And that's because it's really motivating to be able to teach someone how to ask for their favorite things, how to ask for their basic needs. But we have to be really careful not to get caught in that trap of only doing requesting, because language is so much more than that. And you can see how we would be limiting our AAC user if we were only giving them access to just be able to say, I want, I want. Oops, the daisy. Okay. So all that to say that our AAC users need access to colorful language. So instead of focusing, I want the ball, I want music, we can expand that to be able to describe the ball, say we don't like the ball, ask a question about it, direct what we want it to do. Requesting is just a jumping off point for other teaching and modeling that we can do. And then giving access to a wide range of vocabulary and language allows our AAC users to communicate so much more. So we need to have a lot of variety in what we're able to say, and then what we're in turn able to model with them on the system, and just overall expanding their language development. So we love Core. We live by this in the CoreWord Language System, and that's how we provide a robust amount of language for our communicators. And just going into some details again, when you have access to core vocabulary, it's like you have a toolkit of the most important words that we use every day. So core vocabulary is composed of 250 to 400 words that make up 75 to 85% of the words we say. And if we think about that, that's most of what we need as we go on about our day. And then for someone who's non-speaking, that's significant, because if they just have that small number of words, they're able to communicate most of what they would need to communicate. And these words stay the same regardless of gender, age, topic, setting, or disability. And because core is made up of all of our most common verbs, adjectives, prepositions, and other word classes, those are like the building blocks of communication to be able to do all of those different communication functions that we just went over a couple of slides ago. So we can ask questions, we can make jokes, apparently for the rest of our lives. We can crack some jokes, make comments, we can express opinions. But you notice what's missing from this list, and it's nouns. And now I don't want to rag on nouns. I don't want to dismiss the importance of fringe vocabulary, because in early communicators, those are some of the first and most motivating words. But the point is not to get stuck in that and be able to kind of like flavor up those nouns by being more descriptive when we're talking about those things in order to expand language. So just another example of that, one of my favorite places right now is the Botanic Gardens. So if I'm just like talking to you and I just say Botanic Gardens, Botanic Gardens, Botanic Gardens over and over, what am I talking about? What's my communicative intent? And then if we add the word go instead, you can use that in various contexts when you're speaking about that one, to me, personal core word. So we can use that as a directive, go over to the gardens, a request, I want to go there, a question, who's going with us, providing information, we go home. So just showing some diverse uses to highlight just how important it is to have words to use across those different situations. So it lets us convey a little bit more intention and action with our words versus playing a guessing game of, what the communicator means if they're just using that noun or that French word. To sum all that up, core words are crucial in AAC because of their versatility across those contexts and functions. So unlike those specific nouns or verbs, we can use them in various ways and situations, and then we can build a limitless amount of phrases and be able to express all of those language functions. So it gives us a lot of diversity in our expression and helps to promote that expansion of language development. And also helps our communicators have that language they need to be able to communicate, most importantly, independently. We want them to eventually be able to be autonomous and be able to communicate everything they need as independently as possible. So that's the whole philosophy behind CoreWord and how it was designed and created. So CoreWord was created and it's still maintained by speech-language pathologists with a strong clinical background in AAC. And it provides AAC users with that combination of core language, fringe vocabulary, and then some key phrases too for quicker communication. So the system is divided into 5 distinct levels that correspond with each of those vocabulary layouts. And we'll go through those more specifically one by one, but they're CoreWord 6, 12, 20, 40, and 60. So that ranges in design for more emergent communicators to those needing more complex language functions. And then furthermore, the language that's introduced at one level remains at all the subsequent levels. So that means everything stays consistent across the level, and then it just helps with that language growth. All right, and here are some of the key features of the CoreWord Language System that stay consistent across those growing layouts. First of all, core vocabulary. Are you sick of me talking about it yet? Me too. We've been prioritizing this. We have those verbs, we have adjectives, we have functional terms. It's just all based around the core vocabulary approach. Consistent cell location for motor planning. So as you move across the different pages and even those layouts, the location of the word stays consistent. So this helps with motor planning. And this is really important for those communicators who rely on muscle memory to navigate communication devices. So a lot of our users may not necessarily be looking at the label of each individual symbol or picture and navigating that way, but remembering the actual location of the words that they're using. So by keeping this consistent across all of our pages, it helps reinforce that motor planning component and helps to build an avenue towards quicker communication because you have that repetition and you have those things and those words that you're accessing all the time in the same place. And they don't have to relearn the location of the words as they progress through some of these different vocabulary layouts and levels. And then third, the cell shapes denote function. So each cell shape signifies different functions or the category of word, and whether that button is a folder or might take you over to another page of vocabulary. So again, this is just for simplifying that navigation and reinforcing the motor planning component of where all of the vocabulary lives. And lastly, we have Fitzgerald color coding. So this further assists in identifying the different word types that are on the device. And this is an evidence-based system. The colors probably look very familiar because they're used across a lot of different AAC systems. And it gives you a visual hierarchy that aligns with the function of each word that you see. Just looking deeper at that, here's an example of the colors that are associated with each word type. So you can see that pronouns are yellow, verbs are green, nouns are orange, prepositions are pink, and so on. And you can also see how the different cell shapes indicate the function of the button and that they can stay consistent across the word type. So helping contribute to reducing that amount of time that it would take to find the words on each page. And then something else I always like to note with the Fitzgerald key is that it can also be a really great visual tool for us as the communication partner, because everything is logically organized from left to right, just as we would build a phrase. So visually delineating those different word types helps us as a communicator, especially if we're not familiar with the system yet, to be able to build or model when we're working with our user. I've also used this as a verbal cue when I'm teaching. If you want to tell, like you're working on verbs and you want to tell your communicator to look for the green words, that can be a nice way to introduce some vocabulary as well. And this is the CoreWord 40 homepage. So you can see everything that we discussed in action. We have the core vocabulary. We have the different cell shapes on here for different folders and the Fitzgerald key color coding. So our pronouns are yellow, our verbs are green, and then some other colors for the other word functions. And everything is organized in that nice left to right sentence building pattern. Now let's talk about how CoreWord is designed to promote language development. So there's support here for Brown stages of language development, which is important in understanding how our users with complex communication needs acquire and progress through their language skills. So it was developed by Roger Brown, and Brown's 5 stages delineate the progression of grammatical complexity in that expressive language development. So it reflects how you progress through grammar acquisition, starting from just like basic word combinations and advancing into more intricate sentence structures and more complex sentences. Each stage represents a developmental milestone that builds upon each previous one. And that's kind of nice because it gives you a framework if you're an educator, you're a therapist, someone working with a communicator, to be able to like gauge where the communicator is at and then find those next steps to foster that language growth over time. So that can all be used as a guide to scaffold that language development. Now let's go through each stage of Brown stages and how they relate to each of our CoreWord layouts. So in stage 1, we typically see single words and simple word combinations, and these words often represent really concrete objects or actions, like ball or eat or mom. In this stage, communicators are relying more heavily on nouns and verbs to express their basic needs and desires. So they may just say ball to be able to request a ball, or they may say eat when they're hungry. And this stage corresponds with our CoreWord 6 and 12, which are designed for those most emergent communicators to have access to those sorts of words. Moving on to stage 2, communicators combine 2 words more consistently to form simple phrases and sentences. So this is where we see the use of word endings, negatives, and location concepts emerge. And we have these elements built into CoreWord 20 and beyond. And this is where you'll start to see some overlapping in the stages and what size layout that's available and that corresponds to that. And that's on purpose. We don't have, one layout associated with each of Brown's stages, but you're kind of like transitioning through each stage and you have some overlap, access to more basic things and then more access to those language functions or like grammatical markers that you're going to need in the next stage. So that's all on purpose. In stage 3, communicators expand their language by using telegraphic sentences for conveying meaning, but they might still leave out things like articles and other grammatical markers. Irregular past tense and helping verbs develop, And again, these are in CoreWord 20 and above. Then on to stage 4, communicators are beginning to use more complex sentence structures and incorporate more of those grammatical markers. And again, that's 20 and above. And then in stage 4, that's where we really see a refinement in grammatical skills to make complex sentences, and you're using a bunch of different grammatical forms. So you have all the different verb forms, you have more advanced questions that appear, and this is under Brown Stage 5, supported by CoreWord 40 and now CoreWord 60. So those are 2 of our largest layouts, and they have very robust vocabulary for some of those like smaller grammatical markers that you're going to need to use in those stages. Now let's dive into the CoreWord options and see what each layout looks like and what makes each of them unique as they build upon each other. And something else I just want to make note of is that although we've designed this with language development in mind, I am in no means suggesting that you have to start at CoreWord 6 and master that and move on to 12 and then master that and so on. We know we want to be feature matching in that initial evaluation for the most amount of vocabulary that our communicator can handle while also being successful. So when I keep mentioning progression, I just mean that it helps foster like moving that language into the next stage, not necessarily that we're having to master that one level before we move on to the next one. So I just wanted to say that. And before we get a little bit deeper into this, I just want to mention that CoreWord is available on Forbes AAC devices and software. So Forbes has dedicated speech generating devices. We have iOS-based devices, and we also have Windows-based devices. But on the ProSlate 8, 10, and 13, and the ProSlate 13 with Enableize, now those numbers after it just means the size. So the 8 is our little mini guy, and then all the way up to the 13-inch screen, which can be used for communicators who need the larger screen for visual differences or access needs. If you're using that iOS-based system, CoreWord is available through CoughDrop. So I'll give you a link at the very end of this presentation for you to be able to request a license of CoughDrop, and then you will have CoreWord available in that. And even though these come on our iOS system, you can use CoughDrop, like, you know, on Android, on your phone, on a desktop computer. So if you're someone who's working with communicators, that's a really nice thing to try. We also have the WinSlate for Kids with Enableize NXT, and this is going to be our Windows-based device that is more geared towards alternative access. So this runs our Spark software by MindExpress, and CoreWord is integrated into that, along with some other interactive learning games and things that help foster more of like that alternative access development too. All right, so as we align with Brown stages, CoreWord accommodates communicators across all of those different developmental phases, from using more single word expression at stage 1 to more complex language at stage 5. So we have all of those diverse layouts available and different tools that you can use to feature match those layouts to your communicator's needs. So this is just an overview again of what each communicator might look like in each of those stages and the associated CoreWord layout with it. All right, let's get into those different layouts and what specific features are unique to each of them and how they progress along. So CoreWord 6 is for those communicators with really emergent language needs. So it integrates intuitive features like sentence starters, like I want and let play, and that just gives you a springboard for initiating conversations and expressing basic needs. So at this stage, we're really trying to engage in social interactions and really like establish that communicative intent with using AAC. So additionally, CoreWord includes fringe like mom and ball, because we know at these beginning stages, those nouns are going to be important as well. So those are readily accessible in the system. And then CoreWord 6 is made up of evidence-based language content that's created from this research on language development. So this is all designed to be able to support that early language acquisition and building on that for the next levels. If you're using CoreWord 6, and this is why I mentioned some of our devices a slide earlier, but if you're using CoreWord 6 on something like the WinSlate and you're doing alternative access, there are some cause and effect teaching tools that link to different interactive learning games to help teach that association between, like, I'm using a device and I'm making something happen. So outside of communication, there's some things for that. And then for customization, CoreWord 6 also has some skeleton grids that you can personalize as the therapist or the educator to be able to include all of that really individualized personal core and those fringe words that the communicator needs in their CoreWord 6. Moving on to CoreWord 12, that's all about making communication easier and continuing to expand on those phrases that were available in CoreWord 6. So it has expanded sentence starters, and again, you can customize these pages to personal needs and personal forewords. There's also more nouns in each category, so you can begin to expand the vocabulary and navigating more words without decreasing that button size still, if that's an access consideration for your communicator. And then you're going to start to find in this level more social phrases and conversation starters that are grouped in the chat folder. So we know a lot of our communicators have more restricted social interactions as AAC users. So giving them those social phrases to be able to participate in some interactions past something like hello or goodbye and just how are you, that's really important for language development. CoreWord 20, we're going to see predictive linking, which means we're anticipating and suggesting words as communicators use the vocabulary. And this makes communicating on the system faster. So unlike CoreWord 6 and 12 that were a little bit more phrase-based, you can see this is now broken down into individual word classes. So you're now having to build those phrases yourself and break them out into their individual words. We get a message window in CoreWord 20. So now that you're building more of those phrases, you need to be able to see what you're building. We also added in this stage more comments, more descriptive concepts to be able to give their opinion, for communicators to be able to give their opinion, describe their surroundings, just giving more versatility to their expression. And we also added emergency and medical phrases, which can be really, really important for them to be able to communicate their urgent needs. There's some visual schedule templates. There's an ABC and QWERTY keyboard for typing in here. And then again, if you're using this on a WinSlate device, there's some simple environmental control integration, like links to those interactive learning games or controlling your own volume, going out to some accessible apps within the rest of the device straight from here. CoreWord 40 further expands on those other layouts and adds more predictive features to further increase the communication efficiency. So if I'm using the word, and this was true too in CoreWord 20, but if I'm using the word go, it's going to take me over to the places. If I'm using the word eat, it's going to take me straight over to that food. So I'm not having to navigate through each category or make more button hits than necessary. The system already kind of knows what that next fringe word in my phrase is going to be, making it a lot easier to build those phrases. So here we're adding in more grammatical markers, conjunctions, determiners, and then the chat folder is expanded even further to diversify those social phrases. And again, having those device controls like volume buttons or eye gaze activities. And this one, there's also an integration of a photo viewer and music player. Again, this is just on the Win site, but this is for communicators to be able to put in their favorite pictures, their favorite songs, and having access to their language as well to be able to talk about those things. And our latest and largest layout, CoreWord 60. So this supports even the most complex communicators. Still has those predictive features with both core and fringe that are available on each page. And then in addition to the chat folder, there's a social messages folder that gives access to even more social interaction. There's a small words page for function words. And we still have the accessible device controls, environmental controls, and keyboards on there. So as you can see here, as we move along from CoreWord 6 to CoreWord 12, 20, 40, and finally 60, all of this is looking very similar and it's staying very consistent even as you build. So it's all available to you to be able to feature match for what your user needs first of all, and then over time, how they progress through their language development to be able to move through and still be able to understand their system. And I'm just going to pull up, this is Bark by MindExpress. So this is what's available on our Win site, so you can still get all these core word vocabularies through Cough Drop as well. So here's CoreWord 6, and we see those very phrase-based buttons, larger buttons for access if your communicator needs that.
Let's play.
I use something like Let's Play. Now we're linking into some of the interactive games and some of those direct links to favorite activities and favorite nouns that the communicator would want to talk about and play. In CoreWord 12, similar, we just have those expanded phrases.
Let's play.
Now I hit Let's Play. We have some of the same things with the addition of this chat button for easy access to social phrases, and then the ability to navigate back and forth into some of those other words that you need. And sorry, I know I'm going through this really quickly, but if you request that Cough Drop license, you'll be able to spend some time playing with this on your own. CoreWord 20, now I have everything broken out. So I can say I play, and then it takes me over to that next logical page with folders of places that you might play, different categories of toys. So I can easily build out that sentence. Again, there's that chat button that lives in the upper left-hand corner. CoreWord 40, we're just getting bigger. I play. We have more options. We have more options for core to continue building our sentence within that one fringe page. And then finally 60. And this one's a little bit different, and I like this. I play. You can see this section of the screen is changing and expanding that vocabulary and giving you access to more core words to keep building if you want. But then this side over here, these few columns remain consistent. So then you always have access to some of these category folders to be able to hop in, put in a descriptive word, or use some words that are always going to be really important to be able to access, like being able to say that you're finished, or being able to access those words about your device and telling someone that I use this to speak, or I need help finding a word. So that's a cool addition to the largest page set here. And here's the emergency folder that's on that home page as well. And this can all be customized too with those like urgent needs that would be specific to the user. Alrighty. Now let's talk about some different access methods. So this is going to be if you do need a dedicated speech generating device, you maybe need modified access to be able to use your hands, or you need a different access method entirely. CoreWord is able to work with some of the other features of our devices to accommodate those users. So if you get a funded speech sharing device through us at Forbes, we have all of these different access method capabilities within our devices. So with key guards and touch guides, this is a physical barrier that's placed over the top of the device. So it's like a plastic grid, and you can see this here on our Pro Slate. This is a guide to the different shapes and size holes that we have available, but typically this would look like a square grid that would go over CoreWord. And what that does, it helps if you have a communicator who is still working on that finger isolation, maybe just needs like that barrier between them and the device to increase their accuracy so they're not accidentally hitting cells. Kind of same with the touch guide. The only difference between key guard and a touch guide is that touch guides have the circular holes instead. So you can customize this. And I've also seen, you know, even if a user maybe doesn't have the fine motor difficulties, but just having that extra visual delineation between the cells with the key guard can help them with their accuracy as well. So I've seen it used for that reason too. We also have switches. So these can look a variety of different ways. You can have buttons, you can have different like joystick looking switches. You can have ones that just have like a small lever to them. There's a wide variety, but if you have a user who is physically unable to use their hands to be able to point or use a touch screen, switches can be accessed by like any different part of the body, whatever is the most efficient for them. And you can use CoreWord with switch scanning. So then they're using the buttons or whatever kind of switch they're using to select through the different vocabulary and choose what they want to say by hitting a button versus hitting the screen. Head tracking, that's been one of my favorites to explore recently. So head tracking is available through iOS devices, so on our Pro Slate, and then also through Windows on our WinSlate devices. But with head tracking, you're either using facial recognition technology, or you're wearing something external that then acts as a mouse cursor on the screen. So as you move your head, it moves that cursor around the screen and allows you to select. And I think this is really cool on iOS devices right now, just like we have our iPhones where if we have our lock screen set to unlock with our face, that is the kind of technology that it's using to be able to look at a user's face and know where they're moving their head across the screen. So if you have somebody who has pretty good head control, this can be a little less fatiguing than eye gaze. And then of course, if you do need something like eye gaze, you can get an eye gaze camera on either our Pro Slate or our WinSlate. And that's going to allow you to use your eyes to dwell and select. And there's a lot of different customizations and access options that you can do within that to make it easier for the user as well. So regardless of the access needs of your communicator, you can use CoreWord with any of these different methods. Now let's talk about some clinical applications for CoreWord. Particularly some ways that you can integrate core vocabulary into play and literacy. And I'm just going to showcase a couple of things that are available on our WinSlate device. So we have these WinSlate for Kids interactive learning activities, and it's a suite of different games that are optimized for eye gaze training. So before we use eye gaze for communication, there are some skills that we can build upon to make it that we understand like the intentionality of then using it for communication, and also gives us a way to like play with our device without the added pressure of using it for language specifically, because that independent play piece is really important. So we have these activities, and then we could use the CoreWord language system to be able to model during play, model what's going on in the monster activity or like the fish activity. They shrink and disappear. So these can be really engaging for communicators and a nice way to model language. And then this is going to start playing. We also have the language development kit for our win slate, and this is where we've taken, I think it's about 6 toys, and they're all available on Amazon for 30, 40 bucks a piece, but they're all infrared control toys. So we've taken those remote control codes and programmed them into the software so that you have the physical toy, but if you're using your device through eye gaze or some kind of alternative means, you're still able to play in a meaningful way. So this is our unicorn, and you can tell it to sit, you can tell it to dance, you can do all of these things. And then we have a talk about it page that's linked into that with CoreWord to be able to model as you play. So this is just a little video that shows a little how that works. She's really spicy. She's gone off in the back of my trunk plenty of times. So the kids love them. They're really fun and motivating to play with, and a really nice way to model language as you play along. And these are just some examples of some CoreWord phrases you could use during play, and these are all based on CoreWord 60. We can request, like, you want more, I want to play, I need help. You can protest if you don't like it. You can tell it stop. You can say not your turn. You can make comments. I do it, you do it, your turn, I got it. We can describe, play fast, that good, that bad, nice turn. And I just want you to notice how I'm not trying to model entire sentences. A lot of the time we're modeling at the communicator's level, plus one word, so we don't have to get bogged down in trying to talk about complete sentences to talk about our play. We can be a little bit more telegraphic about it and simplify it. So that's why some of these are just like 2-3 words. We can express emotions about it, relate information, ask questions. You kind of get the idea. So play is a really nice opportunity for you to be able to model that core vocabulary. And another thing I like to mention is literacy and using CoreWord. So books are an amazing way to model core vocabulary, and you can program the communicator's favorite books into the reading and writing page. So there's a My Books folder that you can use to put in all of those favorite books. And for independent reading, that's really important for the communicator to be able to have agency over what they want to read and what they like to read. So you can program those choices into CoreWord. And then if you have a really emergent communicator and you're doing shared reading, it's really easy to model things like more, turn, like, not like, finished for the end, and just going over some of those mechanics of reading, regardless of what kind of book you have. Or you could find books that have a repetitive CoreWord and focus on modeling that one word over and over again. So again, you don't have to get bogged down into modeling those complete sentences that have one repetitive CoreWord or a couple that you're focusing on just based on that word, and model that over and over. And I actually moderated a session yesterday, if you guys were there or if you go back on the channel and watch it, but Megan Stewart presented on literacy and sensory activities, and she did like such a great job talking about shared reading for those emergent users who are just beginning on that core vocabulary, and how to create really motivating activities in a school setting to implement that. So I would check that out if you haven't already. And then another resource that I like to mention is Tar Heel Reader. So Tar Heel Reader is a free website where you can go in, and people have created a multitude of adapted books to be able to use with like very early learners. So you can go in and type what CoreWord you want to focus on, or like what kind of theme you're looking for. And it'll come up with a bunch of different like very simplified books that you can then pull to be able to read. So that's a nice resource to have as well. And the final thing I want to mention is that we do have some CVI options. So for those communicators with cortical visual impairment, we have some page sets with black background and high contrast. Now I just want to mention too that this is not one size fits all. This is kind of my soapbox because I used to work very closely with the teacher of the visually impaired when I worked in the schools. But we at least have a framework for you to start off with if you're working with a communicator like that. So we have CoreWord 6 and we have CoreWord 20 that have been modified already. But if you want to use a different grid size, regardless of whether you're using it on the Spark software or if you're using it through CoughdRop, it's very easy to take those pages and put the darker background or high contrast symbols on there. But again, keep in mind that you might need to educate yourself or work with the teacher who's visually impaired if you have someone who does have CVI, because maybe they still need real pictures, maybe they need some further modifications. Having purely high contrast and a black background is sometimes most useful for those who are in a higher phase of CVI. So just keep that in mind, but we do have those things available. Now, how do I try CoreWord? So you can contact one of us here at Forbes, and Rachel, I believe, added those links for you to be able to check these out right away. So if you want to go to our Find a Sales Rep page, click on your state, reach out to your assistive technology specialist to learn more either about our devices or find out more about CoreWord. And then, like I said, you can also request a full version of CoughdRop through our AAC Now program. So this page is going to take you to a form that you can fill out, and then someone will be in contact with you with your login information, and you'll have that premium content available with all of the CoreWord page sets that you can explore a little more. We didn't get to go too deep into it today, but I'd love you guys to have access to it. All right, that's all I have. Please feel free to contact me. Here's my contact information, but do we have any questions?
There were several posted, but we answered a lot of them, and you showed the CVI page sets. That was a question from a few, and some questions on different languages that we addressed as well. One, I don't know if time permitting and your access currently, we did have one question of, can you hide, add, and edit buttons within the CoreWord? I don't know if you're able to just show the editing page.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Or that was asked by Hollis Pass.
Yeah, of course. So let's go into play. We were talking about toys. Let's say I hate these and I want to change that. We go into menu, edit, and then I can just select the button that I want to edit. And here's where I can change my image. Let's talk about Mr. Potato Head, and it automatically searches for the symbol that's associated with that as you start typing, or you can add your own image, search Google within MindExpress. All of this is very similar on CoughdRop as well. It looks a little bit different, but it has all the same capability. And then we can change the label to it and what it says. And now we have a Mr. Potato Head button. So that's very easy to customize. You can also do things with the visibility here. So making it invisible masks it, as you were asking. And then we can do different things too with like the button style. And if we wanted to translate the text to different languages we're being asked about. So there is the ability to translate into different languages. We have a couple of Spanish CoreWords that are already made, but you can translate into any language that's available through Google Translate. And then you can convert the symbol sets and do a lot of different things. You can really get into the weeds with customization, but pretty easy.
I'm not seeing so far any other questions coming through. We'll give them just a few seconds though.
Good.
Okay, well, if anyone has any other questions for Breanne, her contact info is on this last slide there. And if you need access to the links following this, please let us know and we can send them to your personal email. But thank you, Breanne, for sharing your knowledge on CoreWord with us. And thank you all for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.